I'm Elizabeth Vincentelli, and I write for the New York Times.
And I'm Peter Marks, theater critic for the Washington Post. Today, we continue our wanderlust instincts with an exploration of theater in other parts of the country. Today, our guests come from the state that gives you the Green Bay Packers and
cheese curds.
Amazing cheddar cheese. Yes, exactly. Wisconsin. And we're going to talk to Michael Cody and Jen Uphoff-Gray. And they are the dynamic duo behind World Premiere Wisconsin.
Yeah, that project caught my attention because I don't think I'd ever heard of a similar initiative. Maybe there was one, I had not heard of one. And not on that scale. So what happened is between March 1st and June 30th, so it just finished, theaters around Wisconsin got together and they basically created a statewide festival. And they had almost like 50 new plays. It was all new works. And as we know, a lot of festivals of new works have disappeared. I mean, Humana, I still can't believe that's gone. That's just beyond comprehension. But so anyway, So they got together and they kind of organized these premieres of new work at companies all over the state. I think they were like in 13 different cities, and they were professional, semi-professional, amateurs. Like I think there were some school drama departments as well that collaborated. So we're going to have them, explain exactly what it was, what happened, and basically how they pulled it off.
Yeah, they encompassed, I think, everything from Oshkosh to Kenosha. I love the city names in Wisconsin. It's and of course, we are so focused, some of us theater critics, on what's happening on the East and West Coasts, for example. We don't talk enough about the variety, the huge variety of opportunities there are to perform in other parts of the country. So this is really going to be fun.
But it's very hard because unlike film or TV or music that have national scenes, well, theater does too, also to an extent. But you have to be there. And as we know, publications don't have the budget to send us on the road. So I'm in New York. I would love to see a theater around the country. Like I don't have the funds for that. So it's really also linked to this problem of theater coverage in general. I mean, we're lucky that we can write about theater, but that's another conversation
Indeed.
For another day.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm glad that there's initiatives like Creed we talked about on our last show and this one, and people are really like trying to figure out, because there's this avalanche of terrible news, and it's no joke. It's bad out there. You wrote about it. It's a great article, very depressing article, but great article. So I think I feel like this is giving a little bit of another side of what might happen, and it just really it jazzes me up. It's true, it really does.
Good.
To think about that,
too.
And people are doing stuff on the ground. They're really going for it. It feels very theater in a way, like we're going to put on a show.
Exactly. It's Mickey and Judy.
Isn't it great?
And today it's Michael and Jen. So hello, Michael and Jen. Nice to see you.
Michael, in one of what we've exchanged many emails over the past few months, and in one of them you wrote something that really stuck with me because you hit on something that I love, and it really made me laugh. And you say it was amazing this festival was coming out of Wisconsin. In quote, you said, a state that nobody expects anything out besides the Bucks, Packers, beer, and cheese. So first of all, I want to say those four things are amazing, especially cheese. And second of all, Wisconsin actually gave the theater world at least two, probably more, but two great people. Orson Welles and Thornton Wilder were both born in Wisconsin.
And Lunt and Fontanne have their estate here. 10 Chimneys at Genesee Depot. 10 Chimneys Foundation is a big sponsor of World Premiere Wisconsin, and they are a major incubator for new work and for theater artists around the country. So
like right there, you have like 4 things to balance the Bucks Packers beer and cheese. So
and someone's probably going to be upset that I didn't mention the Brewers, but it does seem when you start talking about Wisconsin, inevitably you're talking about one of those things.
Yeah,
and hopefully we can start talking about theater on top of that.
Yeah, other people are grateful you didn't mention the Brewers, Michael. So.
well, actually, I feel that you actually, with that project, that crazy thing you guys did, like I feel like you went back to like another Wisconsin tradition, which is this tradition, 19th century tradition of organizing. Mm-hmm. Wisconsin was a big labor state. There's a lot of organizing, and I feel like that is the spirit you're in, like theater, but also like coming together and making things happen as a group. Yeah. So I felt like that's like there's a
lengthy progressive tradition here alongside, its counterpart. And, this is the Brownson La Follette, Doug La Follette, all the La Follette state. It's also the Joe McCarthy state, right? It's why we're such a swing state when it comes to elections. But, the state's motto is forward. The flagship university is governed by this Wisconsin idea, which is that the government, the university, education, the arts, all should be feeding all the residents of the state and using everything that we learn and that we do for the communal benefit. And that's a pretty inspiring concept.
Okay, but I don't understand with this. Why does, we need to get this out of the way, but like, why does Wisconsin give so little to the arts of state money? That seems to be something. Because
I could solve that, Elizabeth.
Honestly, I was really surprised. I was really surprised that Wisconsin is dead last?
50th.
Yeah.
50th in funding of the arts per capita.
14 cents.
I was surprised.
Yeah, we are 14 cents
I was really
per capita.
surprised. Why do you think that is before we get into the theater? Like, why is that for such a state with a progressive, I don't get it. I don't understand.
It's hard for me to know why it was that way decades ago. We didn't used to be 50th, but we've been 50th or 49th for a long time. And I think it's partly legislatively, our state's been really gerrymandered, and it's very hard to get anything through the government. Even we have a great governor right now who has been trying to get more funds allocated to the arts, but so far it has not gone anywhere.
But I mean, we should also point out that, most other states are not that great either. I mean, it's not like it's a generous country when it comes to state funding for arts organizations. It's
not, but it's really easy to get jealous of our neighbors to the west in Minnesota, they're over $6 per capita compared to our 14 cents.
Wow,
So
that is shocking. That is shocking.
Well, and I think what's fascinating too is that, like, yes, Minnesota and Illinois are both higher in capita. Iowa, who's also very close, is 48th, I think. But if you can, compare Wisconsin to Iowa and the sort of, we've got 3 major markets really of theater in the state. We've got a lot in between. So, and I don't think that's comparable to what's going on in Iowa in terms of theater. So here we are sitting dead last. And then we have this wealth of art being created all across the state. So that this contrast is happening, that in spite of the worst possible financial situation we could be in from state funding, we are counterpointing that with a really robust theater ecosystem. And that's why I think this festival was even possible in the first place.
Can you talk a little bit about the festival? And this is what sort of drew our curiosity, obviously. But can you give us a sense of the size and the scope of the festival, how it all happens?
Michael, do you want to do the stats and I'll do the whys?
Yeah. Why don't you start with the whys? Why don't you start with where we came from?
Oh, actually, you know what? You know what we should do before we even get there? Can you introduce yourself? I can't believe this. Can you introduce yourself and tell us who you are? So, okay.
Sure. I'm Jenna Puff-Gray, and I'm the artistic director of Forward Theater Company in Madison, Wisconsin. And I also, conceived and founded World Premiere Wisconsin. Michael?
Okay. And I'm Michael Cody. I'm a director and producer out of the Midwest. I'm based in Chicago, but I'm a Wisconsinite through and through. And I was brought on actually a year ago today to be the line producer for World Premiere Wisconsin.
Okay.
So
All right.
World Premiere Wisconsin was born as an idea that I hatched in the fall of 2018. I was actually at a conference that Nan Barnett, the head of the National New Play Network, was speaking at, and she was doing a panel about the DC Women's Voices Theater Festival that she produced in 2015 and 2018. And I was listening to her talk about some of the things that she and the other folks involved in that festival had learned. And while I was listening to her, I was thinking about all the things that we'd been trying to achieve and work on here in our Wisconsin theater ecosystem. And I'm not exaggerating. Literally at the end of that panel discussion, I leaned over to my managing director, Julie Swenson, my producing partner at Forward, and said, "Don't hate me, but I have an idea, World Premiere Wisconsin." And the big picture goals that we set for it were to do a statewide festival celebrating the production of new work, to involve theater companies at all levels of our ecosystem, professional companies, semi-professional, community theaters, academic theaters, theater for young audiences, and bring them together on a common project to help build relationships between theater makers across the state, to promote and encourage the development of new work, and then also to raise the profile both within our state and beyond the state's borders of the fact that actually a tremendous amount of generative work happens here. And it's not really, not just Wisconsin, throughout the country at regional theaters around the United States. But I worked on Broadway and off Broadway for 15 years living in New York, and worked with the best of the best artists and technicians and writers in our field. And I have been here for the last 18 years doing the same. And so much new work is happening here. So much exciting generative work is happening here. And it really isn't generally part of the conversation. And so that was another goal of the festival. And so we spent about a year getting all of the professional companies on board, and really kind of all of them came on board. We then started reaching out to all of the other theater makers in the ecosystem statewide, got tremendous buy-in. Meanwhile, this small thing called the pandemic happened. And it was great in some ways that we had started this festival prior to COVID, because we were already all talking to each other. And it provided a tremendous opportunity for collaboration and support as we dealt with the pandemic. And then, as Michael said, a year ago, we said, all right, now we're really ramping up. We need someone who can help bring this over the finish line. So, Michael, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about some of the stats of the festival.
Yeah, I think one of the exciting things as I first came on and I was starting to do research about other new work festivals across the country is that we actually stumbled into something really unique. So obviously there's been large new play festivals. There's been new play festivals like the one that inspired this, that were centrally located in a metropolitan center. New play festivals that are born out of one organization. But as far as we can tell, there has never been a statewide festival with so many stakeholders across so many miles and across 4 months. So in every measurable thing that you can describe this festival, duration, geography, number of theaters, we are the first of its kind statewide festival. And so what that amounted to, we had 47 offerings across those 4 months. Those ranged from full productions to stage readings and a few workshop productions. In total, there's 367 performances that came out of the festival. 37 of those offerings were by Wisconsin-based writers. Let's see, 13 cities were involved across the state, some ranging 200 miles apart from one another. And from March 1st, which the Governor Evers declared as World Premiere Wisconsin Day, through our closing on June 30th, there were 0 weekends without a World Premiere Wisconsin performance. And then inside of this, when I came on board, as someone who used to be a really hungry, young, Wisconsin-based theater artist looking for opportunities, I really thought, well, one of the things we can use this as a vehicle for is how do we support Wisconsin-based writers? So how do we how do we get them connected and get them in conversation with one another? And this was a real focal point of the 10 Chimneys Foundation that was our presenting sponsor. So we also had our first of its kind Wisconsin Dramatist Retreat that was co-sponsored by the Dramatists Guild Institute and the Wisconsin Arts Board. And we brought together 31 playwrights that live and work in Wisconsin to join us for a weekend. They got to see world premiere Wisconsin shows for free. Samuel Hunter came out and was sort of like our keynote guest to talk about his work. And what you start to realize is that this large idea of this festival is the community building among everything else was so critical, especially in this period coming out of COVID where we were so siloed for so many months on end. That I'll give you an example. We had this great opening kickoff at 10 Chimneys. And, I bet Jen, has been to a bunch of events like this, and you kind of see the same cast of characters, right? You see the same veterans in the field, and they're usually of a certain level and whatnot. And when I was at this event, it really came together in a tangible way of like, you have people who are just starting out next to people who have been doing this for decades. You have academic groups mingling with regional giants. And for the first time ever, did I see like the scope of the theater ecosystem in Wisconsin and how it all relied on each other. And I think that was really tangible for people in the room as well to see how we are connected. And it probably goes back to, Elizabeth, what you're talking about in our sense of our organizing sensibilities. I think it just made this thing tangible, and it made people excited about, well, what happens if we can create more opportunities for collision like this in the future? Like what kind of collaborations and partnerships can come out of this? So it's been a really exciting 4 months, and a lot of it I owe to Jen, really, for coming up with such a bold idea. And I said this, and she was so embarrassed because she doesn't want to take any credit for this. But at our closing celebration, I said, like, the one of the reasons why this festival endures and I think will have a lasting impact is that Jen, like a lot of collaborators in the state, was really quick to make this amazing idea, her idea, our collective idea, something we could all have ownership and buy into. And I think that's why people were so eager to get on board.
Something we've been discussing on this podcast, actually, that came up on previous episodes, but it's something we've been talking also about, like not on the podcast, is like you were talking about regional writers and regional theater. And I think for a lot of people, that has like a bad connotation, like because they think regional equals provincial. But I think, number one, that is not the case. And number two, I actually think that is very, very much needed right now, because I think a lot of American theater has become completely rootless. We see a lot of plays that are not set anywhere. There's no sense of place and of I just feel like it becomes these really interchangeable characters and locations that we see, or they're set in New York. It just feels like, oh, it's a couch play, and that couch could be anywhere. And I feel that one of the things, I mean, I may be wrong, but like it feels like one of the things you're trying to do is reclaim this sense of like, yeah, regional theater is a theater that's rooted somewhere in a community and in a history. Like a Wisconsin playwright is not and should not write the same play as someone who lives here or in California or in New Mexico or wherever. And we need to see more of that and not think of it as like, oh, that, you know.
I think that's right, Elizabeth. But I also think, sort of expanding on that, to me, it's less about, and World Premiere Wisconsin is less about specifically Wisconsin playwrights or writing plays set in Wisconsin. We certainly had a lot of that, and that was great. We also had plays, from Lauren Gunderson, right? And Lloyd Suh, and plays set all over the world and in different eras and all of that. I think that what is crucial to the American theater and to regional theater, and I'm thinking very much, Peter, of the article that you just published about what's going on in the regions, what has sustained, and I believe will continue to sustain, American theater is the way regional theaters historically are more invested in our audience.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean you're necessarily writing plays that are set in our own community, but the plays that we produce are they're a conversation with our community about the things that are impacting their lives, and we program for subscriber audiences and for the audiences that are made up of our neighbors, whether it's our neighbors across the street or 100 miles away. It's the people who want to come and see these stories, knowing that they're being programmed by folks who are thinking about them. And that, again, includes incredibly diverse stories and all the different kinds of diversity that we like to talk about.
I didn't mean to say everything has to be about ice fishing, but...
but there's some good plays about ice fishing, too. but building on that, just that we invest in the community as a public good, as a public service. And that's, I think, our strength. I mean, we didn't cancel anything during COVID. I mean, it was digital for a while, but we honored every contract. We never stopped producing. And our audience was there for us.
Are you talking about Forward Theater now?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you made a very good, important point, Jen, and it's really interesting to talk to the two of you today after having just written this piece about the crisis that's sort of developing in regional theater. But I think your point, about contact with the community, engaging with the community. We use that word engagement so much it gets fatigued in people's minds, but it feels so vital to make people feel part of your organization, of the movement, of what's happening on a stage, and that it's for them. And COVID really robbed us of a lot of the opportunity to continue that conversation nationally and locally with people. There was no way to do that except digitally. So it's interesting to hear you emphasize that, stress that as such a vital, central part of regional theater and what it needs to be doing.
And it's partly why we were so thrilled to have the chance to come and talk about what we've been doing with World Premiere Wisconsin with the two of you, because there has been a tremendous amount of bleak news in the American theater and in regional theaters in particular over the last months, several years, weeks, days, and that's really, really real. It is incredibly worrying, and we haven't seen the end of it. But I also think it's important to talk about the fact that there are actually a lot of really good things also happening, and there are a lot of companies out there that are, of course, impacted by COVID and doing some rebuilding financially and in terms of audience size, but that are solid and not going anywhere, and having these good news stories alongside the bad news ones is really crucial as we are persuading donors and audience members to continue to invest in what we do.
Yeah, it's an asymmetrical issue. I think some companies are absolutely much better positioned in this environment than others. I'm just curious, Michael and Jen, one thing about how do you determine who's part of World Premiere Wisconsin? You said it's all sort of up and down the strata of theaters, but how does one participate? How do you become a company that's part of World Premiere Wisconsin?
Yeah, we intentionally kept the parameters pretty open and pretty the barriers pretty low. I mean, I think the key things were it was happening during this time frame, March 1st to June 30th. It was unproduced work. We did allow people to choose whether they were doing a full production stage reading. And I think it was very producer driven. So the core of this festival really was a core group of 11 festival theaters. The way we made the determination between the two is like the festival theaters were our equity houses that were also kickstarted the festival by contributing financially to its beginning. And those all had full runs. Those all had, again, equity casts and full productions. And then after that, it was really about just opening up this idea and welcoming people to be a part of this large idea and be connected to an idea that's going to bring together a community all the way up in Fond du Lac with a community down in Kenosha. And I think because, say we didn't, we could have Jen could have set a parameter of like only Wisconsin playwrights, but as sort of where there's merit in that idea, that would have been really limiting for a ton of companies that had something in the works, and that when World Premiere Wisconsin came around, they're like, let's do it. This is an excuse to push it forward. I think of Capitol City Theater in Madison. They had been kicking around an idea for a Stephen King parody musical for a couple months, couple years, and they learned about World Premiere Wisconsin and like, this is let's just take the opportunity, let's just buckle down and do this. And that's not a unique story as part of this festival. There's so many other groups that were like, I'm thinking of UW Oshkosh in Fond du Lac. There was a play that one of the professors have been sitting on for almost 2 decades and just hadn't gotten the opportunity to really get it moving forward. And this became that push and nudge to get people to getting these things in front of an audience. So I think, Jen wanted, I think, to stay out of the way of what people's passion projects were. Because I think at the end of the day, if you're going to participate in something like this and you're going to be investing in new work and all the risk that comes involved in it, you got to be really passionate about it. So I traveled the state for 4 months seeing as many shows as I can. I broke 30. I didn't quite get to 47.
Wow.
But I saw a lot of people's passion projects, things that they've been wanting to get in front of an audience forever, and this became the excuse to do it.
Yeah, given the goals of the festival, the purpose was to be as inclusive as possible, and being very aware. I mean, even if you just look at the festival theaters, the professional equity houses in the state, they range from First Stage in Milwaukee, which is a theater for young audiences, to Shakespeare companies and companies that do exclusively new works and serve different audiences and serve different missions. And so our goal wasn't to program for those companies, but to encourage them to embark on this collective endeavor by choosing to program a new work during this festival span so that we could all collectively promote what was happening and tie what we were doing together into this larger effort.
So I think when we started, you alluded to that there were like 3 regions, like 3 theater regions in Wisconsin. Are they distinctive? Like what kind of set them apart and how do they function? I guess there's like Madison and probably Milwaukee and then Door County, right?
Yeah,
is that
exactly
kind of how it works? Can you are they pretty much similar or do they have I would assume that Door County would be maybe more like a summer destination,
100%,
maybe outdoors type thing. And had they worked with each other before? Like what kind of collaboration was there among some of them, or maybe none, or were there links?
There's not been a tremendous amount of formal collaboration between the companies. There's a lot of talking to each other, and we frankly share a lot of the same artists, the professional artists that have made their home in this region. A lot of folks will come and do a show at Forward, and then they'll go do something at Milwaukee Rep, and then they'll go do something at American Players Theater in Spring Green. Maybe they'll go do a summer contract at Northern Sky or Peninsula Players in Door County. So there's a lot of overlap in the people that we work with, and also in our audiences. Folks, the theater lovers will. Maybe they live in Milwaukee, but Forward does a premiere of something first, and they'll drive out to see us, or they'll summer in Door County. So there's that kind of overlap, but really coming together and functioning like the peers that we all are, and relying on each other to help us out is not something that was happening as much as I think any of us would have liked it to. And that was one of the impetuses behind World Premiere Wisconsin, is to just build up those relationships.
We should point out that our late colleague Terry Teachout was a huge fan of Wisconsin theater. I think some of his favorite productions, he would come back from Wisconsin and talk about what he'd seen. I think at American Players. I think that's
American Players, and he discovered our company during the filming era,
Wow.
doing all of our streaming, and wrote about a couple of our shows. It has been an enormous loss for the regional theater, his
I
advocacy
know
for
he
what's
really
happening.
did. I think more and
Yeah,
more
he was.
how he linked up parts of the country to sensibility that on the coasts, and sort of showed how much was happening. What, Michael and Jen, what characteristics do you think are shared by the writers, by the creators of your shows? Are there things about the people who want to write for theater? And those are shared probably not just within the borders of Wisconsin, but I wonder what you see in the people who are drawn to a festival like this to be part of it. What are the aspirations of those people? Do you talk about that with the creative people in the various companies? Is it a kind of just an outlet of at some level of a creative outlet in their spare time? Are they people who want to be, playwrights with national followings? Do they just have something desperately they want to say to their community? What do you see in the people who you're producing, or that are part of your alliance?
I mean, all of the above, right? By bringing together, I mean, the work happening on some of the campuses, at some of the really wonderful community theaters that exist all over the state. Maybe very different mission statements from what's happening at, say, Milwaukee Rep, right? But I think that, Michael, what would you say? I would say what they have in common is a real desire to have a conversation with the audience.
Yeah, I'm going to speak a little bit more from the point of view of what came out of the Wisconsin Dramatist Retreat when we brought together those 31 playwrights, because they weren't necessarily all playwrights. Some of them had stuff that was part of World Premiere Wisconsin, but a lot of them were, folks that came to us through recommendations and me searching the New Play Exchange for folks who are Wisconsin writers. And I think what's so fascinating among all of them, and then we had this great conversation with artistic leaders, like Jen was there, and folks from Milwaukee Rep about the New Play development, is that they're very hungry to be, maybe this is what you just said, Jen, but really hungry to be a part of the conversation, and really hungry to have a home for their work, and have probably elected to be in Wisconsin because it has been a long-standing home for them. It's a place that's easier to live in, maybe comparably, than a larger city. But I think what came out of that retreat that was really fascinating is that there are all these disparate ways that I've discovered through this festival of where new work is being done. So there's this, a reading festival that happens every year in Mineral Point. There's a one-act festival that this community group, Village Playhouse, has done for 38 years. That is maybe getting its first props through this festival, But there's all these opportunities, and there hasn't been a mechanism to really connect them together and connect the artists who are living in the state together. And so I think when we brought them together as a community the first time, that's the first time they felt like they were really part of that community. There's so many of these playwrights who came to 10 Chimneys, and so many of them pulled me aside and were like, how did I get here? How did I get invited? And so I think there's a bit of, for me, the work that's interesting to me moving forward that could come out of World Premiere Wisconsin is, again, how do we find ways to collide these artists who are choosing to live here, who love living here, love working here, with the folks that can actively produce their plays or find an audience for them. And that's just been, that was one of my responses to when people ask, like, well, why isn't it all Wisconsin playwrights? And it's like, well, it's just not one of the focuses of the festival, but also let's find a way that we can use the festival to support the folks who are working here.
But to build on that with what you were saying earlier, Peter, that it's not just what Wisconsin writers want, right? I think many playwrights are seeking that. I had some gorgeous conversations with Lauren Gunderson, who wrote the piece that we commissioned at Forward to be part of the festival. And so she spent a lot of time here and is really eager to come back because we are in dialogue with the audience, with the community. The festival increased, I think, the audience's awareness of how special it is to be a part of the creation of new work. And I think that that's something that playwrights everywhere are hungering for. And that's why I hope that models like this one might seem manageable for theater communities all over the country. You don't have to create a whole new infrastructure. It's getting companies that are going to produce work anyway to just say, hey, let's be collaborative and purposeful about what we're doing and when in communication with each other.
What kind of feedback did you get from audiences, from audience members? Did you get people who like traveled to places they had not been before? Like, did that push some people to, I mean, I know if I was living there, I would have gotten into the car and like, gone around because first I love road trips, but also, but I mean, did you get a sense that people were really leaving their area just for that?
100%. Talk about the passport.
Yeah. So one of the early ideas that we wanted to execute on this was a passport of some kind. Just trying to get exactly what you're saying, Elizabeth, is getting people to not only after the impact of the pandemic return to the theaters that they know and love, but discover new theaters. And if we could give them the information and get them excited about it, we figured we could get them visiting places they haven't been before. So the passport was this digital passport on a platform that's usually used for tourism departments across the country. It enabled people to check in when they showed up at shows. As they checked in, they earned points that they could get like World Premiere Wisconsin swag, and then they'd be entered into giveaways. And while I think there's a lot to learn on how we can continue to leverage a tool like that, it was just like one of the ways, like because we were doing this bold, new, all-encompassing idea, it's like let's try new stuff. Let's try thinking about how we're not just marketing one theater, but we're marketing all these theaters and how we can roll like your experience of going to see this play and connecting it with a play that's happening in Madison. So one thing I really do want to mention as part of this conversation is that a key tool in doing that and getting people informed in what was going on is that we, through sponsorship of the United Performing Arts Fund, brought in a former veteran theater critic from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Mike Fisher, to write about the festival, tell the story of the festival.
That's smart. Very smart.
He went way beyond what he was contracted for. He beat me in the number of shows he saw, which I'm still a little crusty about. But he wrote 58 articles about, I think he eclipsed what the standard, the mainstay news outlets write about theater in the state by far. He wrote 58 articles, wrote over 75,000 words about the festival. He had covered nearly every one of the 47 offerings. And by covering it, he interviewed, saw, and or read the play of every one of those offerings.
I'm going to get teary.
Usually more than, he's amazing. He's amazing. And the reason why he's so good too is because before any of us, he'd been on the scene and he had seen a lot of the ways in which these plays and communities are connected with each other. And so the whole time he's looking for like, what's the larger story here? And in the absence, and at no fault of any of our major news outlets really, but at the absence of any solid reporting on what's going on in theater and in the arts, he provided such a great insight to anybody who's curious about, what is that show like in Madison? Oh, well, I've got the information I need to get excited about it.
Okay, that thing blows me away because there's such often this idea that we're all on different sides. Mm-hmm. Like the writers and the critics are on one side and then the theater people are on the other side. And
it's not true.
The fact that we're all part of the same ecosystem, and one is not going to work without the other.
That's
But
right.
it's also,
Yeah.
it's also, it's a very good idea. You've given me a really interesting thought about the ways in which organizations can write about themselves in this era with declining numbers of critics at other in other outlets. I would imagine that'd be a wonderful thing if you could get a grant, if you could get money to maybe have 4 people of very different backgrounds travel the state and write about the shows. It would be a wonderful unifying gesture, and also really helpful to the writers and the directors.
And I'll tell you what, a lot of those articles, a lot of the coverage that Mike did is the only coverage that those shows got over the course of their festival.
Hats off to you guys. Hats off to you guys.
I think that should be sort of a gold standard. And Mike's job wasn't to go around and review shows in a traditional sense.
Got it.
But to find merit, and to also find how is this piece, this one of 47, part of a larger picture, and then bringing it all together to really show us what we did with the festival.
Have you heard from other states, from people in other states, maybe doing world premiere New Mexico, world premiere Colorado, world premiere
I'm honestly starting to hear some comments. I was on a call yesterday. Theater Communications Group does these lovely Zoom calls with artistic directors and managing directors of similar budget-sized companies around the country to talk to each other. And I'm starting to get a lot of questions from folks in Ohio and Texas and different places looking to hear how things went for us and what we learned. I certainly hope that's the case. It was certainly part of the goal. I mean, I was inspired by Nan talking about the DC Festival. I hope that what we're doing just adds to the conversation about different and accessible ways to work together and to uplift new work.
We should also point out that you're swimming a little bit upstream in terms of the trends. Humana, under the radar, these major festivals have gone under. Our opportunities to see new work really need to be reinvigorated, and that's what you're doing. That's the subtext here, which is a very exciting one.
And in a model that didn't put all of the financial or logistical burden onto one existing organization. That we were able to spread the effort and have 47 new plays.
Because also, it didn't mean extra. It didn't really mean any extra expenses because it's something. I mean, they would have done a play in a season. Maybe they just kind of shuffle their schedule a little bit, but it's not like they had to build a new space, or they were working with what they were already doing. So it feels. I mean, do you think that's something? Do you see this becoming annual, or maybe every other year, or
we certainly hope it's going to happen. I think annual would be counterproductive because a lot of the companies that participated don't regularly do new work, and this was a great encouragement for them to try it. But I think if it were to happen, I don't know, every 3 to 4 years, I think people would plan for it and really make that investment if they were commissioning things or developing things.
Right.
I think that's part of it. And doing new works, it did cost everybody more, and it does take more work, and it's more of a gamble than doing something tried and true. But you're right, Elizabeth. It wasn't a multiple of what would already have been invested. It's just a bit more, for each company, and sort of sharing the burden and the effort and the cost of this overarching effort.
And to add to that, I think should we land on a 3 to 4 year model? It's a bit like the Olympics in that way. It's it's something to look forward to, and also something to train towards. The theaters have the time to cultivate those relationships, cultivate the work, and not be caught off guard or feel like they have to rush into participating again. But I think just to build on what everyone's saying is that Yeah, it's a different model of looking at this where the onus of being the incubator isn't fallen on one organization or even one region or one city. We're looking at the whole state as an incubator for new work. And how do you, what I'm interested in is like, how do you then build the on-ramps or the support structure to this incubator in that training period up until the next festival?
Well, you've sort of flooded the zone with new work. Now you want to see how much of it, takes root, so to speak, to mix metaphors.
And to use the platform that we've created, both amongst the artistic community, but also amongst the audience during this 4-month period, now to continue communicating with them through our newsletter, through our social media accounts, and let them know, what's happening with these plays.
Right.
Now, where's that great second production coming? Where is it getting done in Alabama or Utah or Tennessee? And, are the companies that participated in the off years, are they doing other world premieres? Great, let's talk about it, even if it's not part of the festival, but let's continue to lift up the companies doing the work as well as the pieces of work that were created themselves.
Great.
And I'll tell you, like, the next big task that I have in the back of my mind is that, once we do all the grant reporting and once we do all the stuff that we logistically have to do, I'm going to work hard on putting together basically like a yearbook for the festival, which outlines all the shows that were part of it with reviews, and photos and artistic teams, all that. Putting that together in a document and just, sending it to regional theaters across the country in terms of encouraging those next productions or getting some eyeballs in front of the work so that these, at least some of these plays have a life beyond this festival.
Well, I just hope the pictures are better than in my high school yearbook, Michael. So, so make it,
my God,
make
mine
it good.
too.
Make it good. Yeah. But listen, that's a nice place to stop to think about, what's coming next for you guys, what you've created, what the momentum you've started here. It's really fun to hear about what you've done, and I'm really impressed with the achievement. So, congrats.
Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
You know what? I love talking to people like that who are just they're just getting down to it. They're just doing it. Like, screw it. It doesn't exist. We're going to do it. It fills me with hope.
I wonder if that's partially, that comes from something almost either sociological or anthropological with you, Elizabeth. Seriously, because, you are... you're from another culture originally. You've been here a long time. Obviously, you're you know this theater landscape as well as I do. But something about that, I think, still surprises and kind of gets your curiosity piqued.
I really love it. I just love being surprised. And I remember when I first heard about this project, and I thought, like, that's kind of crazy. That's really interesting. I really wanted to go, by the way. I wanted to take like a few days and like just drive around and like try to see a lot of shows in 3 or 4 days and cram as many as I could. Okay, the schedule didn't work out. I couldn't make it, but I was really... I was kind of drawn. I'm really drawn to that stuff. I think one of the things about theater is that the bar of entry can be pretty low.
Right.
Like, you can't put on a show.
Right.
Like, just do it.
Right.
So there's a lot of like hemming and hawing right now. Like, oh my God, I don't have the money. It's too hard, there's obstacles. And I was like, well, theater started with people just like going anywhere and just saying things to each other. So,
and I also loved, I do. And the other thing I just wanted to say was, when they talked about the work of the critic who had gone all over the state, and just understanding, in his passion, which is what you need that level of love and devotion and just pure joy in communicating. It made me feel very close to what we do. So I was, particularly moved by what they've created and how they've involved, not just performers, but also a critic.
Well, because I think what's smart about it is that they think about it, and that's the word they use. They think about it as an ecosystem.
Right. Right.
And the writers, the critics are part of that.
Right.
And it's very, very, it's smart and healthy.
Right.
It's a good way to think about it. Not this adversarial relationship, but this kind of, we're all in this together. And I do love, I think we've just been living in a world that's so divided that this idea that we're all in this together is one that I'm really trying to hang on to.
Well,
that's the takeaway for me. I know I'm and people say I'm cynical.
no, right. Well, those two things can live side by side. You can be healthily skeptical at the same time that you're, kind of just a kid in a candy store still. And I think we've demonstrated that again in this very good episode.
I want to be a kid in a cheese curd store. That's what I want.
More appropriate, exactly. So we'll wrap this one up now, and until the next time, you can find us at marksvincentelli.substack.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter and on Threads.
Threads.
We're both there now.
Yes.
We're on Threads. Okay, so on Twitter, I am at evincentelli, and on Threads, because it imported my Instagram account, which I never use, I am Double Diamond EV, because of course that's a skiing reference. My other obsession.
The hardest downhill skiing.
Double Diamond EV. Although I have been to a resort, by the way, where they have triple diamond.
Wow. Holy crap.
Which I have not done yet.
Wow.
I have my eye on it. And you are Peter Marks Drama on Twitter and Peter J. Marks on Threads. We'll put all this in the show notes. It's probably easier to search for our names because we're brave. We're using our real names.
Indeed.
So very easy to find. So until next time.